Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday lunchtime to you all, or whatever time it is by the time that you listen to this, the Believeland Brits podcast, where, again, a full group of us, we discuss everything that went down on Sunday against the Bears, and then looking forward towards, and yes, guys, we can actually say this now, a proper playoff charge as we bandage everyone up and drag ourselves almost quite literally into the playoffs. You're listening to the Believe in Brits podcast. Yes, thank you to those of you who are spending your lunchtime with us. We pretty laissez-faire approach today, I think, chaps. After a very successful mailbag, we'll just talk about the game on Sunday. It's been a few days now, but I think it's still pretty fresh in our minds, and then set ourselves up for Sunday's Sky Sports chosen game. So you know that the game must be good if Sky Sports deign to show the Browns. So yeah, we'll get into that. With me today, Shaun and Owain are both in. Shaun, how's your week been, bud?
Yeah, good, mate. Just the general run up to Christmas now, so I'm just looking at the clock, wishing it was Friday afternoon, mate. But we're getting there slowly but surely, aren't we? So yeah, all good, mate. Thank you.
Absolutely. Owain, how about you, bud?
Yeah, a lot of football to get through this time of year, but yeah, holding up okay.
Yeah. How many games have you got over the course of the next several days?
So we've had 2 in the space of a week. We've got Boxing Day, New Year's Day. So yeah, with someone with knee problems, it's not the best time of year in a footballing sense.
No, rooting for you all the same. And anyone that is looking to see as to where Owain actually plays, I've been asked the question before. Pontypridd United. So take a look out for them on Twitter and stuff like that. They do post some stuff on there as well. That's how I end up knowing what you're doing. In any case, you scored a fantastic scissor kick the other week. Yeah. See, there you go. The nod of knowing there, rather than bigging yourself up. Very humble. Your celebration less so. But right. Speaking of celebrations, chaps, let's touch on Sunday's game. 20-17 against the Chicago Bears pulls the Browns to 9-5. Here's my first question, really, with all of this. Now, the Bears are obviously 17-7 up going into the fourth quarter. Did you think that we were actually going to pull this out the bag? I, for the first time in a long time, I sort of looked at it and thought we've looked better on the field, but I just felt like it was going to be one that got away from us.
I'll let Shaun answer this.
Yeah, I've said all year long, never write them off. I just think there's too much that has happened this year, and they've just found a way to stay competitive in every game. Let's not, though, downplay how significant of a fourth quarter the team played as a whole. And I say as a whole because it was all three sides of the ball that contributed. Phenomenal to open the quarter with absolutely brilliant play from Cam Mitchell to stop Justin Fields on a 4th and 1. You know, if the Bears convert that, it's probably then at least a 13-point lead because they're sort of very much on the outskirts of field goal range. So, you know, that sort of starts the quarter off in the right manner. Then obviously everyone's seen it back now. He got no right to throw the ball that he did, let's be honest, but the unbelievable throw from Flacco to Amari Cooper, just...
Have we all seen the all-22 for that, by the way? Have we all seen that angle?
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah, strong in about 25 yards of open space, which, you know, would have been a nice, easy completion. But yeah, look, you can't knock what happened, but it was such a low chance of it happening. But it obviously did. And then I think
Sean's had a full turkey dinner, and he's asking for seconds before he's even finished the plate there.
No, listen, mate. Like I say, I'm not complaining with the result of it, but it was just a ridiculous throw, really. Alex Wright then makes a huge play on a 3rd and 1, which again, gets the defense off the field. Hopkins has been money all year, and then obviously we all breathed a huge sigh of relief because, in typical Browns fashion, they obviously gave the Bears one last opportunity, which we've seen happen, unfortunately, on more than one occasion this year, haven't we? We've seen the Browns, for whatever reason, not tackle an opponent, sort of that intent on keeping a guy in bounds. They actually just forget to make a play first and foremost, and it obviously very nearly cost us. I still don't really know how Darnell Mooney doesn't catch that ball, to be completely honest. But yeah, no, we had no right of winning that game. No right whatsoever of winning that game. But this team has done enough all year to earn the fact that I'll stick with them right to the very end.
Absolutely. And, like you say, that not almost having the right to win the game, it almost seemed even more so at the end. And it's always the last one of these, with these single scorers. We've had so many where it's like, oof, God, that would have gone against us 99 times out of 100 any other year apart from this year as well. So that's, that is big there. Owain, what would you say was your biggest takeaway on this game?
It's tough to say, really. I think in a positive sense, again, like Shaun said, they've just stuck around in so many games this year, and they never really look like they're beaten. I didn't really think that they were going to come back in this one just because the offense looked so horrendous for a long time in that game that I just thought at some point, like, we haven't really got enough, offensively to come back 2 scores. I think it was quite telling that they were still in the game at that point, and for a normal offense, for a normal team, 2 scores isn't horrendous to come back from in a fourth quarter. But I thought just the way that it was going, I just didn't think that we had enough in the locker. But in a negative sense, I think it's worth probably saying how banged up this offensive line is.
Yes.
Because, although Montez Sweat is playing very, very well at the minute, it was like a revolving door, a tackle at times, at both tackles as well. And obviously the news comes out last week that we're not getting anyone back either. I think that's quite significant because for a long time in this injury crisis, we had the hope that DeJuan Jones would be back. We had the hope that Jedrick Wills would see the field at some point of this season. So you always hang on to that hope that we may get a little bit healthier at the O-line, but yeah, that could be a real issue going forward. But again, like, if there's any team gonna, plow through this adversity, you wouldn't bet against this one.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's the theme of this year, and you see it in the press conferences, you see it in the post game speeches that Stefanski and all the players that receive the game balls have. It's always doesn't matter. We're still here. You're going to have to literally kick us out in order to stop us from being around, and it is huge. And you can see it on pretty much every game where, as long as they're around, they're a threat. Just looking at that fourth quarter. So, I mean, Joe Flacco was relatively flaccid in the pass game up until the fourth quarter, and it's because I feel like it's almost designed that they try and get as much as they can out of short yardage style plays early, especially with a banged up O-line. They're looking to while the threat is much bigger for sacks, etc., just trying to get out into the flats, into the slants, etc. Didn't really work, but then as soon as you give Flacco the license to let it fly, he threw for 212 yards in the fourth quarter. It's the most by any Browns QB since 1991. And he also became the first Browns QB to throw for at least 300 yards in back-to-back wins since Brian Sipe in 1980. That's a stat and a half. I was just reading that verbatim. I didn't really allow myself to absorb that information. That's massive as well. And I think it just says a lot that we find different ways to win, and we also find almost the exact same way to almost lose as well. 14 of the Bears' points were because of because of the defense. Because of the offense. Essentially, just one's a pick six and one's a pick 1 yard line. So, it's we could almost cut the podcast short in terms of what do we need to do for this coming Sunday. It's quite easy. Limit the turnovers, because turnovers kill us, because it's defense. And with this defense, we're constantly seeing injuries, etc. The back line's been completely ravaged the last few weeks. Doesn't matter. They're still limiting to about 3 to 7 yards earned on defense against teams of the Bears' nature. And if you're looking at the Texans next up, you'd be probably expecting the same, especially if it's Case Keenum going under center and not CJ Stroud. So, the blueprint is definitely there.
Yeah,
I think we can definitely say for certain that despite all of these injuries, the blueprint is there for how we continue on.
I think the encouraging thing has been, as much as anything this season, the injuries have obviously been horrendous, and to some extent, as a fan, it's frustrating to think what might have been, but it's also made the season quite enjoyable. In as much as, to be honest, we're now going to finish with a positive record, whatever happens in the next 3. And I wouldn't be mad if we didn't make the playoffs. I'd probably be disappointed from the position that we're in now, but I think ultimately you've got to be realistic with your expectations for this team. Now, they're just going above and beyond week in and week out. And I think what's really, really encouraging is it's the likes of players like Ronnie Hickman, who's been around the team all year, hasn't had much of a role to play, but played, I want to say, probably 100% of the snaps on Sunday and didn't look out of place on Sunday. We missed Thornhill, we missed Delpit, and then all of a sudden you're playing, Ronnie Hickman and a combination of Duran Harmon, who was having his first action in a Browns uniform, and DeAnthony Bell. And to be completely honest, the level of production was very similar. Yes, the Bears have got a relatively limited offense, I'll give you that, but you've got to play what you're up against. And I thought those guys in particular really stepped up and played a phenomenally good game. It was good to get Denzel Ward back. He was quite limited. Those of you that were keeping an eye on it, he was only really in obvious passing situations. He was quite limited in his usage. Be good to see an uptick in that. I think he's a full participant in strange practice report this week. We've had an injury report without practicing, which is very strange, but it would have been a full practice.
An estimated practice report. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, but I think a number of these players, we mentioned Alex Wright earlier, I think he's really come on as the year's gone on. And I think whatever happens between now and the end of the season, we've really got the foundations in place for this to be a successful franchise for years to come. And I think that's the key thing with this. And I don't want to go over old ground in terms of what we covered in the mailbag last week in terms of Stefanski and extensions and Coach of the Year and this, that and the other. I mean, this could be a Coach of the Year game determiner, this one this weekend. Whoever wins might end up winning the whole thing.
That's a good shout, actually. I like that as the draw for the Sky audience.
Yeah, but I think what I would say is he's laid the foundations, and you can tell from the speeches he's giving in the locker room. You can tell by the emotion. That's often been his biggest criticism, his supposed lack of emotion. But every other word on the post-game press thing would have to be bleeped out on Sunday. Every other word was an F-bomb, which was so un-Stefanski-like. But you could see the relief when the Hail Mary fell short, and he looks like he's really finding his feet as well 4 years in, and he's recognising his special talents. I thought his speech on Myles Garrett this week was brilliant. He's very much always been a team guy, Kevin Stefanski, and especially this year, it's always been a bit of next man up. But I think he recognises he's got the league's best defensive player. And, he's trying to protect him. He's trying to make sure that he gets the officials to give him a fair call, because obviously he didn't get one at all this week, after he's...
I don't think he's had one for about a month.
No, but his rant obviously didn't help either, did it? Because, like you say, just some of the calls, or lack of calls, was just bizarre. But, I think the foundations are being set, mate. And, like I say, regardless of what happens, I'm in a really positive place with this team. It's not necessarily been the season we expected it to be, because I think injuries have really derailed it. But I think in terms of what the future looks like, and if you look beyond this season in terms of who's a free agent, who's not. The Cleveland Browns next year are going to look very, very similar to the Cleveland Browns of this year. And hopefully the injury luck will even itself out. And you just imagine what it might be like with all these players and the right culture in place. This team could really, really go places. So it's really exciting to see. And like I say, fingers crossed they can obviously just get over the line for a deserved playoff appearance this year. And it may be one and done. Who knows? You've got to get to the dance. And as we keep saying, mate, on any given day, the Browns have proved they can hang with anybody, even with all these obstacles in the way.
Well, I mean, at this, if we win on Sunday, it's looking very likely it's going to be Browns versus Jacksonville in Jacksonville. But I wouldn't say no.
I wouldn't say no. I'll let Owain come in because I've been talking for a while there, but I'm still not particularly high on the Jags, mate. I've got to be honest. I think the Jags might still even slip out of the whole thing altogether, but I'll let Owain in on that one.
Yeah, certainly if you're looking at playoff possibilities, that one wouldn't be a bad one to have, would it? Like, considering we've beaten them already, we look pretty comfortable in that game, especially on defense. So, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad one to have at all. And like Shaun said, I think, I think I'm in the same boat. If we miss the playoffs from here, obviously it'd be disappointing considering the position that they put themselves in. However, you look at the season and the injuries and everything that's gone on, and you wouldn't be, I think.
Oh yeah, when you look back on it in years,
yeah.
like with the hindsight of maybe the summer, when we do our pods back in August, for example, you look at it and just go, well.
I think if you were looking at it back in August when we were doing our, predictor pods, I think 9 and 7, I think we'd have probably been on 9 and 8, whatever the case may be. We'd have been disappointed with that back then, I think.
Yeah.
But then, if you'd have offered us 9 and 8 when Deshaun Watson goes down, even though we might have had like 5-6 wins by then anyway, I think if you'd have offered us that back then, I think we'd have probably taken it, wouldn't we? So,
yeah.
I think realism is probably the word you'd have to use for this season, whatever the case may be. But like, for them to have achieved so much already is incredible. And like I say, I wouldn't count them out for anything. If we get into the playoffs, then we are going to be a problem, because we're going to go into every game that we play as underdogs, and rightly so.
And with unpredictable as well.
Yeah, and with the fight that they've shown and the unpredictability of how they've played, why can't they have a little run? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm excited about it, where this team's at. Like Shaun said, there's a lot of young pieces that have played well this season, a lot of young pieces that are on cheap deals, which is really important going forward. And yeah, I think that obviously the big question mark is how good's our QB going to come back to next year, and that will, ultimately decide the fate of this franchise going forward. But other than that, I think you can say that they're in a really, really good spot.
Yeah. So it's interesting that we've moved sort of into how does this look next year sort of thing. I think it's actually a really good time to start looking at that, because Shaun, as you rightly say, we're in a very good spot in that we're providing this experience, and we're learning as to whether or not these guys can actually perform, in spots where they just would not have had that chance and that responsibility and opportunity and all the rest of it. It allows you to look at roster building going forward. It allows you to know that you don't have to chop and change for depth, etc. You know what you have. I think that the Deshaun Watson question is very valid, Owain. We still don't know. If we get the second half at the Ravens, Deshaun Watson, exactly. If we get the Deshaun Watson with a bit of bone sticking out of his shoulder, then we're good. That's the best Deshaun Watson we've seen since he's come on the team. Can we opt to put a bit of plastic where that is? Because my God, it worked. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, in a situation where the injuries, instead of having 26% of the cap on IR, of which is what it currently is, I couldn't believe that stat when I heard it. Let's say we only had 10% of the cap on IR. Do we look at ourselves as potential Super Bowl contenders at this point? Because honestly, I don't think we're far off anyway. We've beaten the 49ers, we've beaten the Ravens. At this rate, I reckon that we'd give the Chiefs a run for their money. The Chiefs don't exactly look hot. We've beaten the Jags. The Dolphins are one of which I wouldn't want in the playoffs, particularly myself, but they're prone to a bad day. The NFC outside of San Fran is, pick your poison and just have a good game against them. You'd likely give them a challenge. I'm looking at Dallas and the Eagles here, not so much the Bucks. I think the Bucks would be one of which would be an easier time of it. Probably the easiest out of all the ramifications there. But, you look at it and you think in our current state, we'd give it a go. And in a world where we've got maybe Nick Chubb, tackles back, less concern on the defensive side of the ball, I'm there and I'm looking at trips to Vegas.
Yeah, look, mate, we're not going to be a million miles away. We shouldn't be. I mean, this roster's been constructed in such a way to give us that opportunity, and the way that they've cleverly rolled money forward and that type of thing, it allows the Browns to spend aggressively with the way that they've structured contracts and everything, and hopefully the payoff will be, a significant one. Ultimately, like I said, there's a lot of young pieces. We've drafted well consistently now for a period of time. You only got to look at the contributions of players like Martin Emerson as a prime example, who's well outperforming his expectations. DeJuan Jones, you mentioned, he was a 4th-round pick this year. He's played as well as, you'd expect a 1st-round tackle to play. Let's be honest, he's been that good. Jerome Ford was a 5th-round pick. He's contributed, he's stepped in, and he's done a reasonable job. I've got no problem with Jerome Ford being a complimentary back, to Nick Chubb. Hopefully Nick Chubb comes back fit and strong. But certainly got no problem with Jerome Ford being around. I think ETR was showing signs of progression, so like I say, I think ultimately you look at the drafting that we've done in recent times, and I think we're in a really, really strong position, so it absolutely should hopefully, come home to roost. I think we've said for a year or two now that it feels as though the Steelers are on the decline. It very much feels like that. Cincinnati, you've got some big decisions personnel-wise coming up this summer in terms of who they re-sign, who they don't. The Ravens, unfortunately, seem to consistently find a way, but I think ultimately, we had this conversation the other day, didn't we? It's not a bad thing to be in a competitive division because it kind of gears you up ready for the postseason.
Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. So, we're kind of used to that environment now anyway, aren't we? So, I think, you've got a lot of players that are really on the ascent. David Njoku is really developing into that sort of tier 1 tight end. He's always been considered to have lots of potential, but never really done it consistently. I'd argue this season he's finally seemingly putting it together on a week in and week out basis. You'd like to think Elijah Moore will continue to integrate more into the offense, the same with Cedric Tillman. So they in theory should get better. I think the defense will be pretty much exactly as it is next year. Personnel-wise, there's literally, you look across this defense, Anthony Walker's a free agent. I would imagine they'll work something out and bring him back. Same with Sione Takitaki. I think he's on a 1-year deal, and again, I'd imagine they'll work something out and bring him back. The rest of them are all under contract. Yeah. I think there's only Zadarius Smith, and like I say, that you could argue that Alex Wright will potentially have a bigger role. They'll obviously potentially look at maybe bringing in a different pass rusher, or they might even re-sign Zadarius. So like I say, it's potential, mate, is huge. It's huge. So yeah, I mean, let's say just fingers crossed they can get over the line this next few weeks, because if they can get the playoff berth, I think it's what they deserve in terms of the effort that they've put out there. Owain mentioned it earlier, the offensive line as an example. I think we've had 10 players miss time on the offensive line, if you include people like Dawson Deaton, who didn't even take a snap all year, and Drew Forbes, who didn't take a snap all year because they went on IR. And then you've had, Michael Dunn's been in, and then he was on IR for 4 weeks and he's come back. And then you've had, Pochich out for a game or two. Nick Harris has missed time. I thought Luke Whippler came in and played a few snaps on Sunday, and he did a reasonable job when he came in. That was his first action of the season. It's just, it's remarkable, and it speaks to the coaching that this next man up mentality. So many teams would fold, and I don't think we can stress that enough. So many teams would have folded by now. And it was like when Joel Batonio went out the game on Sunday, it's just like, okay, who's next?
Yeah, I think we're numb to injuries now. I remember even at the start of the season, it'd be a case of, oh no, the stretcher's on again. I now just I barely bat an eyelid. It's now just a case of, we've gone to another commercial break. I'm guessing that one of ours is down. Yep. Oh, out for the game. Cool. Concussion or worse?
Here's a question for you, boys. It's turning back to this weekend in a little bit more detail. Joel Batonio looks like he may well be back. It seems that the back's getting better and all the rest of it. Have we reached the point, and I say this because I think Michael Dunn...
Where we rest him.
To be rested. I think Michael Dunn is probably a better offensive lineman. I know he plays on the interior, but I always think Michael Dunn, when he's played, has never let us down. Do we put Michael Dunn at left guard and move Batonio out to tackle? Because these two tackles, I've got to be honest, are giving nightmares. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, boys, but I'll throw it out there. Would that potentially be our best combination of linemen at the minute to slide Batonio over and put Dunn in as a guard?
I think it probably all depends on whether he wants to do it or not. I would imagine he's done it, I think, once for us, or a couple of times for us in the past, a couple of seasons ago, and done really, really well there. I don't mind that at all. It's all about whether he wants to do it. The only caveat you could probably add to it is, would you want half healthy Batonio going out there at left tackle in probably was a more strenuous position on your body, I would think. That's probably the only question mark I would have for it. But, if he wanted to do it, I certainly wouldn't have any objections.
Might be one for later. Like, maybe not for this. Like Owain says, he's just starting to get back from the injury. All the rest of it's probably not the right time. But, if it's something to look at for maybe the Jets or the Bengals, potentially. I know that Ethan Pokic is in the fake report, he was down as being back yesterday, as was Anthony Walker. Obviously, Anthony Walker not an offensive lineman, but just another thing to throw out there. So
I think that Houston have got their best pass rusher available either. I don't think Will Anderson's healthy.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah, which will probably allow you a free pass this week. I mean, Christensen on the one side, I've felt perfectly fine with. It's James Hudson, and it's mainly the penalties that make me that make me frustrated with him.
Hudson's definitely the bigger liability, but I think both tackles in general have been struggling. Look again, level of expectation. I'm not expecting Jerron Christian to be anything than what he is. He was on the street and he's come and he's stepped in and he's done a reasonable job. He's certainly, like you say, playing better than what Hudson is. I think that's a position that the Browns will look to address in the off-season in terms of a backup tackle.
Yeah.
It is frightening. I'm just looking at the depth chart and the injury report, and you look at this offensive line group, it's like Christian, questionable, Batonio, questionable, Pokic, questionable, Teller, questionable, Forbes out, Wills IR, Deaton IR, Conklin IR, Dwan Jones IR. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Actually, just getting 5 guys out there is a bit of a result at the minute, to be completely honest.
And you wonder why the running game hasn't been able to produce anything this season.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
And that's before you take Nick Chubb into consideration.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. No, but it's definitely an interesting question. I just wonder whether or not this would be the right game for it. Especially, like you say, with Anderson, unlikely at this point. Don't wish to spread any fake news. I don't know for certain personally, but with him unlikely to play on Sunday, it might not be too much trouble compared to, we've had Hudson play against TJ1 stuff like that. So it might be one where we can keep him out and not worry too much about it. Something that we've obviously been doing some pie in the sky thinking, and it's been nice to. I feel like our optimism is one where we could lose the next 3 games and we'd be like, what, we've had a great run. But at the same time, we're also thinking we could probably take anyone that we play week in, week out. We can win 3-0. We can win 31-17 if we wanted to. Let me put forward to you a scenario. You tell me how likely this is, right? And I'll do it in the order that it would matter to us. So first of all, the Browns to win their last 3 games. Houston, Jets, Bengals. Probably above half chance there. You've got most likely Case Keenum leading the Texans there, and they not looked great last time out. You got the Jets, who have given up on their season now, and are likely. Is it Glennon that would likely be leading the line there if Zach Wilson's still concussed? And then you've got the Bengals, who will probably not have anything to play for anymore, or will probably like having that. Will probably be battling for an easier schedule next year. Hopefully by that point. So I'd say that's possible. The Ravens to only win one of their next 3. San Fran, Miami, and Pittsburgh.
Where's the Miami game?
Jack definitely did not put that on his thing that I'm taking this off from. The Ravens are at home for that one.
I struggle to see the Dolphins go in there and win it.
Right, so you would fall at that point then. So I'm trying to see as to how the Browns get the number 1 seed somehow, and I thought that you'd put it there. That would mean that the Ravens would get the 1st seed. So then Dolphins also would only be able to win 1 game, but they've got Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo, but they would need to win the Baltimore game.
Yeah, and then all I would say in terms of Miami, I think Miami haven't got a good record against teams with a good record against them. They beat up on poor teams when they've been in supposedly more competitive games. They've been found wanting. I think Baltimore having that ridiculous block in the back, walk-off punt return not called, probably sealed the division, because I think they probably lose on Christmas Day at San Francisco, but I can see them winning the remaining 2. Pittsburgh, you may as well give them the win there. The Steelers.
Oh yeah, that's the one that I'd give the win on. I'm just begging for a Miami win. I think.
Yeah, look. I think ultimately, mate. I think it'd be nice to think, and don't get me wrong. A few weeks ago, we predicted that it may well be the case, but they took care of business by hook or by crook in that Rams game. They then went on the road. I said, I think a lot of people still think the Jags are sort of guaranteed for the playoffs. I really don't, to be completely honest. I think the Jags look really, really poor at the minute, and Lawrence now in concussion protocol as well. I think they're struggling and clinging to stay on. I actually think the Colts might be sneaky for that division. If you look at the fixtures, mate, the Colts have got the Falcons, the Raiders, and then the Texans. With the Texans and Raiders at home to finish. So I think the Colts schedule is probably the most favourable.
I know, but how Colts would it be to lose all 3 of those?
Well, look, someone's going to lose. If you look at the schedule game, mate, the Broncos and the Colts have got very nice schedules. The Broncos have got the Patriots, the Chargers, and the Raiders. On that in that chasing pack. So I can't stress enough how important I think this game is on Sunday, because I think if they win on Sunday, it's pretty much probably going to be clinched, because it's going to be another tie break taken care of.
Oh yeah, there are 8 scenarios where we can go through with a Cleveland win. There are 8 scenarios where playoffs are confirmed. I'm not going to go through them because they're complex AF, but
they are, mate. But the thing is, if you just put the win in, and it probably means that multiple other teams are going to lose or tie or all the rest of it.
I think it's 99% chance. It's 99% chance if we win.
That's where I was going to go to. Those wins or losses, wins, ties, whatever, losses or ties that are needed can then come at any point in the following weeks if we've got that win on the board. Yeah. Plus the fact that we obviously then play Thursday night at home before anybody else plays, which would absolutely be a clincher by that stage if there was anything out. So I think this game's huge on Sunday, mate. I really hope they can get it done. I think the football gods potentially turning in our favour in terms of some of the injuries. I don't like to see other teams with injuries, because I've hated it and it sucked the life out of our season. But it does feel as though the tide is turning in that way. I don't want to get to the last game against Cincinnati and have to get something. We've got a good record against the Bengals, but in all likelihood, if we're at that stage, it's probably because it means something to the Bengals as well.
Yeah.
You might as well give them the win this weekend, in my opinion, against the Steelers. They've got a very good record against the Chiefs.
Me and Owain are both pulling faces at that one. I couldn't give that one.
I think the Steelers might actually be a little bit better to finish the season than maybe we're all thinking they are. I say that just
Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, obviously that's not great, but like Mike Tomlin's under a great deal of pressure at the moment, which we've never seen the like really as Browns fans. And I just think when Mike Tomlin's under pressure, he seems to, bring out the best in everyone that he's got. So I wonder whether all this dysfunction actually ends up helping them a little bit. And there's a little bit of a reaction there. It obviously could go the other way, but I think obviously Jamar Chase being out for the Bengals is going to be huge for them. Obviously, they still got Higgins, they still got Boyd, but that is going to be a huge miss for them. Because, Browning, I've watched a couple of their games since Browning's gone in, and whenever he's under a great deal of pressure, it's just throw it up and Chase will do something. So, without that, is Higgins, when he's the number one, going to be able to do the same thing? Who knows?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is Pittsburgh and Minnesota are relatively alike, I find, at the moment in terms of performance. And the Vikings should have taken care of business last week. I think it's going to be quite close. I definitely don't think it's going to be a gimme. That's for sure.
I think you look at the way that the Steelers have won games this season, last season as well. It's not as if Mason Rudolph has to go in there and set the world on fire. Pickett's never done that. Like, their formula to winning has very much been the same as what ours has been this year, is leave the defense do what the defense does and just score barely enough points to win games. So it's not as if Mason Rudolph has to go out there and beat Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's, there's not a great deal of difference between these two rosters, I don't think. So I wouldn't guarantee them a win this weekend.
Yeah. Also, you look at these 3 games of which the Steelers got left. Surely this is the only one of which is truly obtainable to them, I would find, as they march towards that being better than 500, which I don't think they'll do now. But you've got Bengals at home, Seattle away, which is never great, and then Ravens away. It's finally the year the curse is broken, right?
It should be.
Yeah, look, I hope you two are right. It'd suit me down to the ground if they beat the Bengals on Sunday and then they lose the 2 after that. But I just can't see. They haven't scored more than I'm going back to the game against the Packers in early November where they scored 23 points. I understand what you're saying about the defense. I think the difference with the Browns is when the offense has needed to score 30-odd points, they've found a way to do it. This Steelers offense has been trash all year, and it continues to be so. And I think the effort and the attitude and all of that kind of stuff is now being really questioned. They're the least of my concerns, to be honest, in terms of the teams that are in the race. If they can beat Cincinnati on Saturday, then that's great, because I think ultimately then, particularly if we obviously then can take care of business, I don't think then that either of those two can surpass us. So that'll be the ideal result for us on Saturday if it does indeed come to fruition.
Yeah, I'd quite like to not have to worry about anything on week 18. Put out a practice squad.
Yeah, fifth seed regardless. That'd be perfect, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Fifth seed regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to go to the Giants-Eagles game on week 18, but it's on at the same time as the Bengals game. So part of me is there thinking, do I find the New York Backers pub instead and go and watch that? It probably comes down to how much is on the line when we go into that week. Okay, so I'm conscious of the fact that we all have work. We're coming to you at the moment through our lunch break at the moment, and I can see that we're getting close towards the top of the hour. Does anyone have anything in which they want to say about this coming week? Anything in which they're looking for? For me, it's just try to be cleaner on the turnovers. I'd like to see, and also another thing as well. I like this development of Cedric Tillman. I feel like it's not been brought up in circles enough. He had 5 receptions last week. Flacco seems to be using him as almost like a safety valve for quite a few of these players, and he's doing well in terms of bringing them down as well. I think that since DPJ went, I think that was done in order to back Tillman's development, and he's he's taking it with both hands, pun intended.
Yeah, I think there's a few growing pains. I think there's a few sort of things where he potentially appears to be in the wrong spot or runs the wrong route, but you kind of half expect that with a rookie. They do say that wide receiver is one of the hardest transitions to make from the college game to the NFL game. Yeah, look, I think the DPJ trade was facilitated because there wasn't going to be enough room to keep all of them, and they obviously made the decision that with DPJ going up for contract renewal, that it was obviously the sensible thing to go with the younger player out the two. I don't think DPJ, correct me if I'm wrong, has pulled up any trees since the trade. I could be wrong on that, but I can't even think I've even heard that he's had any impact whatsoever on the Lions.
He had like one catch off the top.
There you go. So, I don't think it's a move that we're going to, massively regret. And yeah, look, he needs to be a big part of the offense. He was one of the earlier picks that we could make in terms of the draft selections that we had at our disposal. And as we said right at the outset, the Watson trade and all the picks that involved meant that drafting became even more paramount importance to get it right. If he can become a contributory piece to this offense, then absolutely he's got the body type. Ultimately we do need that kind of contribution from him. So yeah, I'd agree it's encouraging to see. I like his physical presence. He's got a good size, and all the rest of it. I think it's a route to keep our eye on in the off season. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole now, as like you say, we're coming to the end of the pod, but I do still think there needs to be a bit of a shake up of personnel within that room. I was crying out for a deep shot last week, for example, to Marquise Goodwin, which eventually came, but he's on the back nine of his career, and you want somebody that's going to be able to do that consistently and stretch the field. And I think that's what the offense is really missing in terms of the sort of spacing and the concepts that we're able to run. But yeah, Tillman's been encouraging signs of progression in the last few weeks, certainly.
I'm glad that there was agreement there. It was one thing which I actually put in a notepad and thought, I actually think I'm onto something here. If no one's got anything else that they're looking out for in this game particularly, one thing which I will bring up as a bit of barking mad towards the end, has anyone seen as to just how bitter Adam Rank got, the NFL fantasy writer? For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about and just thinks I'm going a little loopy, Adam Rank is a guy who in the summer did a bunch of he did all the predictions shorts for the NFL. He had the Browns down at 6-11 on the season, of which obviously rubbed us the right way. We were all thrilled to know that someone in NFL circles, given the keys to do such a task, thought that we were just going to crash and burn because of too many questions. Well, that Bears fan, yes, he's a Bears fan, decided to actually tag David Njoku in a post saying that he had his heel out of bounds for that first touchdown throw. David Njoku then piped up at him afterwards. All nice and fun if you go and search that back. But the onslaught of ridicule afterwards has been great. And he's one of the guys that does the predictions each week that the NFL shows up on its previews. And he's got us to lose by 6 again this week. So we're probably in for a 6-point win, lads.
If any of the listeners haven't actually seen his prediction show that he did before the season, it's actually hilarious because it's ended up working the complete opposite for 90% of.
Yeah, he's 4-10. He's 4-10 on the season, and he has us to lose to the Texans, both in what he's predicted this week on the week by week, but also at the start of the year as well. So I'm ready to put the dub in the column.
I mean, I sneaky respect the bollocks that he's shown in following it up and just
yeah,
doubling down.
You need it, don't you?
Yeah, I respect that.
If you go down, you want to go down swinging.
Yeah, why not? But he's deserved all the ridicule that he's had. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just the homerishness of it all, really. Like I can tell you that the Ravens are likely to win. 2 out the next 3 at the very least, and I wouldn't be surprised if they beat San Fran as well. But I certainly wouldn't cry about it, etc., etc. But hey, that's what separates us from the guys who get paid to do this. We simply do it out of love. And speaking of, you'll next hear from us in terms of our labour of love. Just thinking, so the next game is Christmas Eve, isn't it? So probably not one for directly after the game. Can't do the following day because Christmas Day. We'll make it work. We'll do it. We'll do another one. I think it's going to be this style until the playoffs, at least, where we have one pod per week. We'll do it between Boxing Day and the Jets game. We'll get one in.
Love the confidence, mate. It'll be like this until the playoffs. That's confidence for you. Loving your word.
Well, the NFL playoffs exist with or without us.
Once we qualified for
Everyone knows that's what I meant. I'm just hedging my bets. And I was also told by a certain person on this podcast, who shall remain nameless, that I need to stop coming up with fake news. So I can't...
I don't know who that could be.
No, not so. So I need to make sure that I have all of my ducks in a row. So I will take your booze with glee, Owain. Right, that's it for us. To everyone listening, so our next pod will be our last one for 2023. I want to wish everyone that's listened, watched, engaged, spoken to us, all the rest of it, a really happy Christmas. Hope the Browns give you a nice little Christmas Eve gift before Santa comes down the chimney for you. We will be back just before the new year, and we will see you then. You've been listening to the Believe in Brits podcast.